Welcome to the 25-26 Reflections Workshop. The slideshow itself has a lot of information that you can read on your own, and it can be found on scpta.org/reflections. I'm briefly going to go over each slide, though, and give a little bit more information. So I recommend you write down any of your questions because the answer could come up in a future slide. And at the end, I'm going to stick around until all questions are answered. So let's get started. Reflections is the national PTA sponsored program that encourages students to create artwork based on a specific theme. The theme should be reflected in their entry. This year's theme is I Belong. You can find promotional graphics by clicking that link or on the state and national reflections websites. The theme is selected through a national competition. It starts at the state level. So students can submit their theme ideas through our Google form. We select our top 5 submissions to send to national, and then they choose from everybody who sends on to them. You can share the following link with your families and post it on social media because the winner gets $100. So if one of your students, their idea happens to be the winner, they win $100. So that's pretty cool. I'd like to note that some students might not be able to submit on their district issued devices if their district blocks Google Forms that have been created by people who don't have a district email address. Here's a list of important dates. I'm going to add them to a reflections email that I put out later this month. And you can always view them on the website or on this slideshow if you lose track of them. So you don't have to scramble to write everything down right now. It is all posted on the website. Here's a list of contact information for each PTA district. If you're not sure which district that you're in, you can send me an email requesting that information. Just make sure you include your local unit name. And the whole name, not just like SES or something like that. I want you to become familiar with the state and national websites for important information and forms. It has lots of information that you find very beneficial if you are running a reflections program. All right, so who can participate? All compliant PTAs in South Carolina have the option of participating. You also have the option of accepting homeschooled students in your area. The plus side is it adds a chance of your school being recognized and allows a child the opportunity to participate in a program they normally wouldn't have had the option to participate in. The negative is that you could have a winner who doesn't attend your school, but they would be representing it. Anywhere that they're announced as a winner, it would be with your school name attached. And also, students do not have to have a membership to participate. You can run your program however you want, so you do have the option of requiring membership with entry, but it is not a requirement of state or national. I do not recommend requiring students to have a membership to participate. As usual, we're offering all categories and divisions. I want to point out that as far as we're concerned, students can enter as many times, as many categories as they wish. The same student can submit 2 dance, 3 music, 4 photography entries. We don't limit students to only 1 entry in 1 category. You can choose to limit, although I don't see how it benefits you to do that. The 3rd entry that a student creates could end up being the thing that wins national. So if you choose to allow them to only submit 1 thing, you could limit your potential for your school being placed at national. If you're a new chair and your school has always restricted it, consider asking why. Maybe you guys used to do physical entries and you just couldn't fit them everywhere for people to be submitting so many entries. But if you've gone digital, that would not be an issue anymore. So also, I want to note that, I mentioned that there were big changes in the email. One of those big changes is the Accessible Arts Division is no longer listed there as an alternative to an age division. It used to be right here. And so all students, regardless of whether they're going to be accessible arts or not, are going to select their grade division. For accessible art students, they can choose the grade that they are most closely aligned with. If a student qualifies for accessible arts, they will have already selected their grade division, and then they choose whether they want to opt into the accessible arts division. By selecting their grade level and opting in separately, they can now be judged with students in their similar age range. Previously, all accessible arts kids were judged together, regardless of age. So seniors and kindergartners were all lumped together in the accessible arts division. So now they'll choose their age division and decide whether they want to opt in. So you don't have to judge them separately within your school if you don't have enough judges and it just makes it too confusing. That's okay. Just judge them accessible arts separate from the traditional group. But it's especially beneficial for when it gets to the district and state level because we have them so spread apart. So you can still have your group judged kindergarten through fifth if you can't break them into intermediate and primary, or if you're a middle and high school combined, it's up to you. You don't have to break them apart. If you have the ability to do so, great. But it's a huge benefit at the district and state level that these kids will now have a fairer shot at being judged. If they do not choose to opt in, they have the same rules as everyone else and they'll be judged the same. So they should not receive any assistance that's not allowed for other children in that grade division. If they choose to opt into the accessible arts division, they can receive non-artistic accommodations from an adult. If they opt into the accessible arts division, they're going to be placed, they're going to be recognized as accessible arts. So if that's an issue for them, then they might want to opt out. You can click the link for more information and it shows you specific accessible arts rules from national. You can also find it on scpta.org/reflections under detailed category rules. So it gives you the categories like the rules for dance, but it also gives you the rules for accessible arts. So that's all in there. National PTA has added a new webpage specifically for families. I think this part's really cool. So it has tips for how to create an entry, coming up with artist statements and titles. I highly recommend you share this with your families. The information can help students figure out exactly what national judges are looking for. It also is helpful, like if you're always looking for a way to engage with families on social media and have things to share, this is one of those great like filler things. Just share like every few weeks. Don't forget to check out this website to learn how to put together the best reflections entries, something like that. Not wanting to leave leaders out, National updated their page for you guys too. They reconfigured the leader page and included a downloadable checklist along with trying to make their resources easier to find. So check out their website, pta.org. Just click on programs, reflections, and then start your program. Or the link in the website, in the slide. So the first thing you'll need to do to start your program is register your PTA with National. When you register, select local PTA because you're registering your unit and not yourself. So even if you're a parent who is running the Reflections program, you're not going to click I'm a parent. You're going to click I am a local PTA because you are registering your whole school. And districts, that one's self-explanatory. So then sometimes it's hard to remember, have I registered already? National does send me the list of who has registered, but they have not done it yet. So that's why if you try and click that right now, there's nothing on it. But once they start sending me who has registered over the last few months, I will populate that in there. And then you can see when it's been updated. I'll click it for you right now. Oh. So I update the title to include the last date that I updated this spreadsheet. So when they share it with me, I'll put it in here and I'll update this. So if you think you registered, just hold off for now. You don't need to register a second time. Next, you need to decide if you're going to use paper or digital entry forms. If you decide to do a paper entry form and collect physical entries, note that we do not accept physical entries at the state level. And I'm going to guess that district is also not going to accept paper entries. Follow up with them later. Information will come from your district. However, I I don't believe that any districts are accepting paper and physical entries. Um, so if you did do physical entries, you would have to take photos and scan and submit and all of that. You would have to basically digitize all of your winners. Um, if you don't have any reflections volunteers that are tech savvy and you really want to stick with the paper, it is available. You can always try a combination if that's what works best for your school. You're also going to need to choose a deadline that allows enough time for your students to work on their entries, but also for you to get your entries judged and submitted in time for district. So, I used to suggest the second week of January as the school deadline, um, because I think it's nice to give the students a holiday break to finish their entries. And then also, if your students have like if you chose October 1st and everybody else in the state has got December or January as their deadline, your students were at a major disadvantage compared to the other students in the state because they had much less time to work on their entries. So that's just my recommendation, but you're free to set your deadline earlier, especially since there is an earlier deadline this year. You have to submit your winners to your district by January 17th. It was previously January 31st, going directly to state. We're going to talk more about that in a future slide, but the new deadline is January 17th. So if you've been doing this for a few years and you're used to, I submit to my judges on the 17th, you're going to have to bump that up a little sooner so that you're ready to submit to district by the 17th. So if you choose to use a paper form, this is a Google Doc right here. It's available on the website, on the state website. Pages 1 and 2 include the rules and guidelines. Pages 3 and 4, they've been renumbered as 1 and 2 because it's 1 and 2 of the actual entry form. So pages 3 and 4 of the document are the actual entry. And you can see the changes that have taken place for accessible arts. Details has been mapped out because these are required that they provide this information. And we talk about that a little bit in a little bit. But you can see it's changed up a little. It used to all fit on one page. It is now a 2-page paper document. So if you've been using paper in the past, throw out your old ones. Do not keep any old documents. Everything has changed. Also, if you're going to use the student packet, that paper form, don't forget to update the top to include like when and where people are supposed to submit their paper copies to. If you go digital, which most of you do, you're going to want to use a Google form or a Microsoft form, something similar to that, that allows you to collect all the same information that's on the paper copies. Consider what's accessible on your district issued student devices. So for example, if you're a Microsoft district, you might want to use Microsoft Forms because it's more likely that they'll be compatible with your students' devices. Same thing if you're a Google district. When you look at like this version, for example, we'll make a copy. This is what it would be like for you. So you would make a copy. You now own this form. So when you're looking at it, you'll see I included a link to the rules and guidelines, the rubric. It's all available for the students to see. And then you're going to want to make sure that you edit like the deadline and the contact info for your reflections chair. So you're going to put that stuff in there. Scroll down to section 2. If you end up creating your own form, try to use this as your template because so I put the student name and the signature as the same the same bubble there so that they only have to type their name once and it counts as the waiver. Scrolling down to section 3, consider deleting anything that's not relevant to your school. So um, if you are in an elementary school and you have primary and intermediate, maybe you want to delete middle and high school off of this. If you're a middle school or a high school and you have no other grades, maybe you delete this altogether. You'll just have to enter it when you submit to your district what division your school qualifies as. Scrolling down to section 4 is where you have the most editing, because this is where you're going to have to change this from a short answer to a file upload. Then, once you do that, you're going to want to change the maximum number of files to typically 5 is the most that anybody ever really uploads is 3. If somebody does like a sculpture, they're allowed to submit 3 photos from different angles of it, or music entries if they had to submit their sheet music along with the music upload. So you change that. I typically change the file size, and then from there you have to update the settings to be larger. I promise you will never get a terabyte worth of entries. I've never gotten anywhere near that at the state level, but I just change it so that there's no issues to anything anybody submits to me. And then I don't need this, so I'm going to move this to the trash. But that's what it should be like for you all. And then the same for the Microsoft one is a little bit different, but it's all the same. I think I just had different sections set up on that one, but it's all the same as far as like the things you need to edit and as far as like putting in your deadline and all of that. Um, so here are some tips that I have for going digital. One of the biggest issues that units run into is school districts blocking the reflections entry forms from working on student devices. You can enlist a staff member if you can. If they're the ones that click that link there and they are the owner of the Google form or the Microsoft form, that would be great because then students are able to complete it on their district issued devices, which means that they can submit in school. So if an English teacher is having them submit a literature assignment, they're able to do it right there in class. But if it's not created by a staff member, then it's usually blocked. Most cases, that's what I've seen. So that's fine too. So if you do get the staff member to create it, and they can just share the folder with you that the entries get uploaded to, so you can still see results. Students can fill out the form when they're in school, and that usually works out. If you can't use a staff member, then don't forget to just announce that students have to complete it at home on a personal computer or phone. So it just won't be able to complete at school, and that's fine. Test your form before you publicly share it. Test it on a student device if it's something being shared with students. Like use your kid's device if you can, or even if it's not something that's getting shared with for district use, it's something that's getting tested. Something that will be filled out on personal devices at home. Test it out as your kid. Like sign out of the one that the owner of the document of the form and try to sign in with like somebody else's significant other, or you have a different personal email address. Just test it separately. And then check your settings like I showed you before in that. Just make sure your settings are set to actually receive uploads. So this page is self-explanatory. It has some links that could be useful. The only thing I wanted to highlight is make sure you work with your school and district to determine what has worked in the past, as far as what kind of forms. There were some new category rules last year. So we'll cover those in a bit. And when you're ready to collect entries, make sure you're familiar with the program rules for each category. So make sure that you flag incomplete entries and entries that don't follow the guidelines. For example, if someone submits a photo collage as photography, but it's actually visual arts because it was like glued on paper, make sure you notify the student that you're changing the category type to fit the appropriate rules. And then you're going to send it to the correct category judge. And then allow yourself time to review these things before you send to your judges. So like leave yourself a day or two to go through everything before you expect to send to judges, and buffer that extra time in there. If there's an incomplete entry form or an incorrectly placed entry and it moves all the way up to state, it's going to get disqualified. In the past, I was tracking down missing information or allowing entries to be judged, but I would just put a note that says it can't be first place because it's not allowed to move on to national. I'm not going to be doing that anymore. Please do not advance entries that are not complete or qualified. I'm going to note it's up to districts on how they want to handle incorrect entries. So if they accept it and they want to allow that to come through, that's okay. But I'm going to highly recommend they not move it up to state because I'm not going to move it up to national. I'm not going to accept them. Start recruiting judges early. Judges should have some expertise in the category they're judging. They should not have connections to students. It shouldn't be a parent judging the work of their own student. It's preferable that you don't have teachers as judges. They already do enough. So try to contact photography studios and private art and music teachers and local artists. Just make sure you give them specific deadlines and reminders. Make sure you provide them with judging instructions and a rubric, which this is available on the website. You're going to want to remind them that the interpretation of theme is worth 40%. It's on the rubric, it's in here, it's on the scorecard and everything, but just make sure you point that out so that they remember. And you're going to give them the deadline and let them know that they can have colleagues and friends help them. You can use gifts and incentives, but hopefully you can find them without that. It is allowed though. If you're using physical entries, you're going to make sure that you have the entry form attached. You don't want any mix-ups. So even with physical entries, you're still going to have some digital entries like music, dance, and film. They're going to probably be on flash drives though, if you were taking physical. So you can either put them on individual like Ziplocs and staple it to an entry form, or combine all the entries onto one flash drive and just properly title them so the judges know which ones are which. It's easier for the judges if you combine everything onto a flash drive. Just make sure you're copying and pasting. Do not click cut or move because you want to keep the original entry on the original flash drive. When you're ready to do judging digitally, you're going to share your Google folder or Microsoft folder with the individual judges. Again, go through the files, make sure everything is titled properly so the judges know which ones they're reviewing. For example, when I send mine to judges, I move all the primary dance entries into a primary folder, and I include a copy of the original spreadsheet. I edit that spreadsheet to remove anything that is not primary dance entry, and then I change the settings of the folder to anyone with the link can view, and I share that link with my judge. I repeat that until every category has been sent to all of my judges. And if you want to see what my folders look like at the end, remind me. Another big change this year, you're going to be submitting directly to your district now. Local units are going to submit directly to their district, and then only the district winners are going to move up to state. So districts can run their program however they see fit. So make sure you're paying attention to any information that comes out from your district. If you have questions, that contact slide earlier on had your district contacts on there. So you can reach out to them. This is the way the program was designed to be. Local units are supposed to advance to district, district advance to state, state advances to national, because districts have have to have time for to be able to judge their winners and then get them to me in time, we had to push up that local unit deadline. So that's the reason why you have an earlier deadline. But thankfully, this will relieve that confusion that students who won at state but not at district and vice versa. So this will help clarify all of that for people. And it's just, like I said, it's just the way it's supposed to be. We finally have a districts, almost all of our districts have leadership in it. And so we're ready to move back to this is the way that it actually used to be many years ago. So this is very exciting. Once your judges are finished, it's time to submit your winners to district. Although the entire board could receive that district submission email, only one person will need to fill it out. Do not share that link with families. That particular form will only be for local units to submit their winners to district. And each district will decide individually if they want to accept first place or top 2, top 3. You're going to need to pay attention to your district specific information for that when we get a little closer. If you have a tie and you're not sure how to advance them, the student with the higher score for interpretation of theme is the one who moves forward. That's just the same rule for advancing to national. I also want to mention that work will only be accepted if one student's on the entry form. Collaborations are not allowed, so they'd be disqualified at a state level. This rule is not new, but it occasionally happens with the dance category. It is okay to have multiple dancers in the video. It's just only one person can be responsible for the choreography. On this slide, you see an example of the district submission form. So this is what you'll be completing to submit to the district, something like this. You'll complete the information and then move on to each page. Just make sure you get all the way through it and hit submit to complete. When you upload an entry, rename the files to the following code. So category code, division code, district code, school, student last name, first initial. Dance is D, film is F, and so on. So make sure you're using your school name and not initials. For my example, I know it's Somerville High School and not Somerville Elementary because of the H that's in the division code. If it said SHS, I could have thought it's Southside High, another one of our PTSAs. So even though you're submitting to district and like if you're in the Greenville district and you're submitting to your district, obviously everyone is submitting a G. But by the time it moves up to state, it gets confusing. So that's why even though you're submitting to districts this year, you're still going to include your district code because hopefully you're advancing and it'll be easier to track you down. As we already covered, the deadline to submit is January 17th. I'm just repeating this because this is such a big change. Just want to make sure. January 17th. It is earlier than the previous January 31st, so please make sure you're prepared for the earlier deadline. You will have to wrap up your program sooner so that you can advance. This hasn't changed. We celebrate several winners from each category and division. We'll announce our winners March 2nd through email and social media. National doesn't use terms like first place, second place. For national, their first place is outstanding award. For us, our first place is acknowledged as Award of Excellence. We will have one Award of Excellence winner per category and division. These will be advanced to national. Our second through fourth place winners are acknowledged as Award of Merit winners, and they are not announced in any particular order. You can find generic principals certificates available on the national website. I create ours on Canva. Feel free to acknowledge your winners however you see fit. So some schools have big ceremonies, others just make an announcement on a loudspeaker or a social media post. So it's totally up to you how you want to do that. Some schools acknowledge first through third, others have top 4. Again, run your program your own way. I have provided a fillable announcement form that you can edit for the school and district level. These are completely optional. If you decide to use it, just make sure you edit the bright red sections. I'll click so you know what I'm talking about. Again, you're clicking make a copy. So you own this copy. This is now yours. You can edit. So just the bright red stuff. Obviously, that's you're going to put, you know, earlier I used Somerville High School as an example. It would say SHS, PTSA, Reflections Winners. So just make sure that you're editing that bright red stuff anywhere if you do use this. And if like the formatting gets funky and you're getting frustrated, you can add me as an editor and I will help you. You do not have to use this though. Again, this is totally optional. Make your announcements however you want. It since it's a Google Doc, you can save it as a PDF or a Word doc, but if you want to make an image out of it, you might want to do like a screen grab in Microsoft Edge. If you want me to show you how to do that, I can do that after I finish the rest of the slides. Just remind me at the end. All of the links have been scattered throughout the slideshow are all available on the website. So I just want all Reflections chairs familiar with this page because a lot of the information that you need can just be found right there. If there's anything that's not on the site that you think would be beneficial to add, please let me know and I will work on that. But as I highlighted, there's promotion and some of this screen grab is from last year. So it might have moved around just a little bit, but there is promotional material. Your Google and Microsoft entry forms are available here with the paper. I no longer have a PDF. It's just the Word doc that's available, category rules and all of that. So this was updated last year, the use of copyright materials. Guidelines were clarified to explain that while permitted in certain areas, copyright material in the entry must be incidental. So it has to be completely different. It can't be the basis. So for example, Disney Castle is something that's trademarked, but it's just in the background of, it's not the main focus of this photo. It's allowed. While the other one is an original work of fan art and it's really cool, but it's entirely made up of copyright material and it would be disqualified. Use of technology was updated last year. Just way too much AI and just computer created. So for that, in those details on the entry forms, it's just made more clear to the students that they need to provide a description of what technology they used and how they used it to create their entry forms. Also, no video files for music. It's never been allowed, but some of them slipped through over the years. Please make sure your students know to just submit the audio and not video. The wording was updated last year also for visual arts and literature. Just correcting, they used to say computer generated images, but now that kind of sounds like AI as things have advanced. So that has changed to digital art and graphics. And for literature, students can dictate to an adult what they want based on their age, based on their ability rather than their age. This has some of the guidelines that are relevant to all categories and definitely worth brushing up on if you are a leader. These next few slides cover how to ID what category entries belong in. So, for example, the one on the left, I kind of brought that up as an example earlier. If somebody printed out a whole bunch of pictures and they used it to create a collage, that is now a visual arts. Even though it's a bunch of pictures, it is not a photography entry, it is a visual arts entry. And then on the right is a collage that was completely created in photo editing software and would be submitted under photography because it has been printed as one seamless photography image. Photo, sorry. Again, on the right, the image was photography photo that's been edited in software, and the one on the left is entirely made up with software. So it's considered digital art and graphics, not a computer generated image. It's an image that was created from scratch using software, not AI or clip art. I know this was a lot of information, so to summarize, make sure you register at a national level with the link, determine how you want to run your program, promote repeatedly on several platforms, look for your judges and start looking early, submit your winners to district by January 17th. Districts will be releasing information in the coming weeks, so make sure you're following your district guidelines. And you can always reach out to me or your district chair for help. Thank you so much for attending. And if you don't have any questions, you can hop off at any time. I'm going to stay on and answer questions until everyone is done. And I did see another question in the chat just before. Do I get judges for each category? I do. Um, if you have somebody who you feel would be qualified to judge several categories, that is okay. I mean, there's no rule to um, having to have a set number of judges. Another chat question. Most students at Lakes and Bridges Charter are dyslexic and incredibly talented. So, for the dyslexic students, all would qualify for the disability category. I am not an expert in that cat. If they have a, it's typically like if they have a 504, is how you would determine that. And I don't know if dyslexic students have a 504. I personally would never reach out to these students and say, prove it. So, um, I, I mean, that's up to you. Yes, if they have 504s and IEPs, absolutely they qualify for the accessible arts division. Again, they don't have to automatically enroll in that. It's just an option available to them. Um, but yes, they would qualify.
Our school is a middle through high school, so that would essentially be two separate um, forms and
Yes.
categories and everything, right?
Well, no, you would have the same form like it's just
But would I treat it as two
they'll
separate entities? Does that make sense?
fill out the same form. Um and you wouldn't have to change like this form is for you, this form is for you. You'll just leave on both of these groups, middle and high
Okay,
school. So you just leave
so
those
then it
both.
would divide.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one
And
link for the
then,
whole school. It just you judge, make sure that your judges know this is a middle schooler, this is a high schooler.
okay. And then the other question, I know you said that teachers were not, I know that there are some teachers that are wanting to get involved in judging, and these are teachers who don't, because we have art majors. Um, it's the School of the Arts, so they don't, the teachers don't necessarily work with the kids in their majors. Would it be out of line to have like middle school teachers judging high school submissions and vice versa, so there's not overlap, or would you recommend staying away from that at all?
It's it's not against the rules. I would recommend against it only for the reason of like, okay, I would hope that nobody would use any kind of bias. But the middle school teachers most likely taught those high school kids that they would be judging. And you may have your favorites, and you wouldn't want it muddied by, well, like this was my stellar student, so I want to make sure that they win first place, you know.
And
Um,
they're blind judged
they should
generally?
be, yes.
Okay.
So you would, if the student submitted last name dot first name is on their title of their entry, which makes it easier for you as the chair to
Oh,
track, they would most likely know. Like if you if you're not really that familiar with the students, then sure, it would you'd have no idea who you're judging just because you see a last name. Um, if you changed the title of the files somehow to just like 1, 2, 3, 4 and artist statement and title one, you know, like you just changed everything, then absolutely that would be super blind. Like unless they actually made it in class or something, they'd have no idea. So yeah, that there is a way to do it. And I have done it like that before because I did a long time ago have when I was a local unit, I did have teachers judge before. So it's just who's the easiest to find, really. Um, but
Mhm.
ideally, you try if you could find another unit nearby who wouldn't like who you want to share and cross off like, hey, I'll have my teachers judge yours and you judge mine kind of thing. That's kind of helpful, but it is tough to coordinate that sometimes. So in
Thank you.
Greenville, the district level, they hesitate asking teachers at a school like the Fine Arts Center because they may have one of the students or their siblings. Plus, those teachers are so busy at that time. Yes, and that is another. They really are slammed. If you can find anyone else, like even I know you're down in Charleston. If you found like Charleston arts students, like College of Charleston students who are willing to do it. And like there's lots of different, I know there's
Yeah, I
tons
think
of
I'll be able to find
photographers and stuff. Yeah.
for
Like
sure.
things like that. Dance
And it might
studios.
have, oh
Go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh, it might have said, but how many judges are there supposed to be per category?
So I mean there's only six categories. So six judges. I only have six judges. Like my
Oh, one per
dance
category?
Yeah, my dance judges primary through high school. I just have them. I mentioned before that I would show like so this is what it looks like. This is my main spreadsheet, my master spreadsheet of everyone who submitted to me last year. And then I break it down into dance and then so this gets shared with my dance judge. And then from there, all of the dance entries. Plus, then I take that master spreadsheet, I make a copy of it, and then I hide all of this. So this is all that they get.
Okay, okay. Okay, that actually helps a lot. I think it'll be a lot easier. I was thinking you needed to have like three judges per category or something.
Yeah,
So,
no. And I go,
okay.
I actually end up doing this too so that they can just read everything without, um, but see, even though it just says Google Drive, you see how it pops up though, and it says
Hmm.
last name. So even though it's like kind of hidden, once they see that, they'll know who the
Right.
last name is. Um,
Okay.
so that's what my judging looks like. Um,
Perfect. Thank you. And I'm excited of everything you guys are doing. Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for coming. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to reach out to me or your district leader.